can't be the only person who feels like that they're being talked to or treated like a 3-year-old. Hello everybody, this is Leanne here, back at it again with these video things. It has been a minute, so I apologize, but let's get to the point. So, what I mean by me being 3-year-old. So, I don't really know how to explain this in the best way possible, but it's something I've caught on to for a while now. Or no, what I should say is I've boiled it down to feeling like this, because I've always told people that I interact with that I don't feel like I am at the same wavelength. Is that what I want to say? Wavelength as everybody else. What I mean by that is in my thought process and everybody else's thought process are vastly different from each other. So much so that I feel like most people have to dumb down themselves just to interact with me. And of course, that could be a plethora of different emotions going on in my own head and making me come up with my own conclusions of what's going on in real life. But it gets harder and harder to not feel that way when you interact with your coworkers at work, given the fact that's the only means of communication throughout my day-to-day is usually at work. And this is not to point out anyone specifically, it's just something that I've come across multiple times. So, with a creative mind such as myself, I tend to always try to think outside the box, come up with creative, new, and innovative ways to deal with the situation going on at work. And if someone presents me with a task and their weird way of going about proceeding with that task, it leaves me wondering why they would go do all this extra stuff when they could just do this and get the job done. And yes, it is not necessarily a healthy and or an efficient way to get the job done by doing it your own way, and it's just a lot easier if you do it the company way. Except when they leave room for improvements. Jobs always make a big deal about thinking outside the box or doing something different and pretty much giving them a reason why they want to hire you and or keep you. And for me, that's just an open box, a blank canvas of possibilities, just waiting for me. So, when the opportunity provides itself, I don't know if that's how I want to say that sentence, but we're going to roll with it. I am going to jump on it. My absolute favorite thing to do in any job is to do something different and unique, so that way people can look at me and go, wow, you came up with that? I can't believe you've been doing it this dumb way this entire time. And so, I usually try my best to get the job done. Unfortunately, I don't have any memorable examples to give. Like real experiences that I've had in the past to go off of. Basically, they'll give me a problem, and they'll tell me a roundabout way to resolve the problem. And for me, it's a bit difficult for me to always do exactly what it is that the supervisors and or people who are overseeing me tell me to do. So usually I end up finding my own way because it's a lot easier for me, and 9 times out of 10 it gets the job done regardless. There's no point in arguing why my method is better than their method. It's just, if the job gets done, just do it any way you want to, but not everybody sees it that way. So, when they walk upon me seeing me do my own way, and they're asking questions as to why I'm doing it that way versus the quote-unquote easier ways that they demonstrated themselves, and I go to explain why my method works better. Only for something mild to go wrong or, not be as efficient as they thought it would be, and so they would just tell me, don't worry about doing it that way, please just go back to your normal way. All because I might have had a little bit of a hiccup, or it's just too complicated in their eyes because they don't have the same thought process as me. A different version of this situation, which is far more common than the one I just explained, is when a problem presents itself to me, and there is no solution, or at least not one yet. So, one example of this, I would have to show pictures because there is no way for me to explain this without anyone understanding, so there will be pictures. So, if anyone knows what grommets are metal circles that you usually put on book bags or straps or something to create a metal ring and hole into fabric. Usually you see them on drawstring bags where the little string is going through the side or the corners of the bags. They come in different colors, but they usually are metal. Anyways, probably nobody knows this, but those grommets are two different pieces of metal smushed together and cutting out the fabric in the center. One side is called a grommet, and the other side is called a washer. The grommet side, which is taller and kind of looks like a top hat, goes on one end, and the flat side, which kind of looks like a washer or a coin, goes on the other side. There's usually a machine or some kind of high pressure device that smashes the two pieces together with the fabric being in between them. Now, when this process is done without the washer, it usually flattens the top end, causing it to fold outward and around, which is supposed to grab onto the washer, so that way they're interlocked within each other. But without the washer, it looks different. After I've demonstrated the example shown in this video somewhere in here, you'll notice that the grommet, when used without the washer, kinda ends up looking like a washer itself. Where I work, you have to use this giant mechanical machine that produces these grommets. This giant machine grommets the products that we produce. Well, we've come across an issue. When I was refilling the boxes holding the two separate washer and grommets, I found that I accidentally put the grommets into the washer bucket. Basically, I just accidentally mixed them up in the machine. I had to take them all out and re-put them back in. In the process of doing that, I found a couple used grommets, not washers, but just grommets without the washer part, in the bucket of washers. Now, to me, they look vastly different, but to anyone else, they look pretty much similar, and if not the same. Well, somebody who is very experienced with using that machine, I had to go walk over there and explain to them, what do I do with these used washers? I didn't know if they reused them for something else or whatever. I just had to ask, because I knew they couldn't go back in the machine because they were already used. To which the person was telling me, they're washers, just put them back. And I was like, no, they're not washers. These are grommets, they've been used. Can't put them back, otherwise it'll mess up the machine. And she says, no, they are washers. I promise you those are washers. And I was showing her the difference between the washer and the used grommets side by side. And I was explaining it to her, but she was so quick to answer me that she was not understanding what I'm telling her. Basically, the moral of the story is, which is not the end of the story, by the way, I think a lot of people tend to do more hearing than listening to me. And that could be a problem for everyone. But I find that other people tend to communicate a lot easier and better with each other than me trying to communicate to them. So the entire time I'm desperately trying to explain to this coworker, hey, these two are vastly different things and it could very much destroy the machine if you try to use it. It took way too many times before she finally understood, hey, this is completely different and pretty much useless, what do I do with them? Of course I got the expected answer is just throw them away, but I still needed to ask, and explaining it seemed like it should have taken a lot less time than it actually did. I did not have my phone at the time, so I couldn't really show her the pictures of what a washer would look like beforehand. It was just complicated, but I have a lot of moments like that, where I try to approach somebody with a problem and very carefully explain the situation, but somehow people are lost and ask questions that I've already answered, or try to get me to repeat myself multiple times despite me very, very clearly explaining it the first time pretty easily. It gets kind of frustrating whenever we are in a more of a hot situation, and when I say hot situation, I mean a more dire situation where something needs to be resolved fairly quickly, and I don't really do well with stress, but still, I try my best to explain the situation, and these usually occur whenever I'm talking to somebody usually above me. I find that most people try to just resolve the situation just so it can be out of their face, and I just get back to work, or, go back to what I was doing. But it gets very frustrating because 9 times out of 10, it just makes me feel like a child. I usually compare it to a kid crying to an adult about let's say, the kitchen being on fire. But the adult thinks, oh, this kid has a wild imagination. They're just cute and having fun. Just ignore them and they'll eventually go away. And that gets very annoying because while I know that sometimes I might blow things a little out of proportion, there are reasons why I try so hard to avoid bad things from happening before it gets to that point. And so when I bring up a concern I'm currently dealing with, or something that will definitely come up, and usually I'm right, it gets very annoying when someone just pushes past it and dismisses the problem entirely. I just don't understand why it seems like that most people would rather just get it out of the way or pretend it's not that big of a deal until it comes around and bites them in the butt. Ever since I was told by my mother to be more proactive instead of reactive, I've been trying my absolute best to get everything resolved before it happens. Except when people make me slow down and make it so I can't get the situation resolved. I don't want to sound like a whiny kid, but if there's a problem, I want to get it resolved or at least, addressed before it becomes a bigger problem. And it's not something I could just ignore and move on and let somebody else catch the flames, because it usually involves me anyways. So why set me up for failure? I don't understand. But yeah, basically that's it. I don't like it whenever I try to bring up a problem or try to come up with a solution and someone dismisses it because, oh, I have such a wild imagination, I don't know what I'm talking about, and it's just a lot easier if I just do what I'm told instead of trying to come up with new ways to get things done. But, that's the unfortunateness of having a wild imagination and creativity working in a 9-to-5 job.